Hey everyone, today I want to show you guys a little trick on using freezer paper to cut fabric with your Explore machine. Usually you have to have bonded, you have to bond your fabric in order to cut it with an Explore machine, but I found a little workaround by using freezer paper to bond it instead of heat and bond. So what I do, I have some felt and I cut my felt down and I cut my freezer paper down to match it. And you're gonna do the shiny side of your freezer paper. You can see the difference here, the shiny side down to your felt. I'm going to be using my Easy Press today. I'm at the Easy Press 2. I'm going to set it to 350 because if you have an older Easy Press, that's as high as it goes. So I'm going to do it at 350, that way if you have an older one you can do it too. And I'm going to press it for about 30 seconds. I have gotten some feedback about my freezer paper method, and I'm taking some tips from a few other people and some of their recommendations on what they did. So I'm really excited to show you guys today with all of my feedback. So I'm just going to do it for 30 seconds. For the felt, I'm going to be doing felt and cotton today, but the felt I'm only bonding on one side. Felt is already a little bit stiffer, so it doesn't need, I've been told that the felt doesn't need as much stabilizing as a softer, like cotton-like fabric. So you only need to do one side of the felt with the freezer paper. So it's going to be really hot, so be careful and put it aside to cool down. So what I'm going to do first is I have my cotton fabric and I want to just iron that out so that it's flat. Now what I like to do is, because if you're going to be using these and you're not ironing it on, which would be why you would need this, you're going to need to remember if your pattern side is up or down. So what I like to do is I like to sandwich it in between the freezer paper with, again, the shiny sides on each side of the fabric. And I'm going to iron on the back side first. I have found that ironing on the back side, and then when I flip it over, I have it right side up. Now, if you were to put it fabric or prints, the print side down, you would need to mirror your image, again depending on your pattern. Now the felt, it doesn't really matter because there is no pattern to it, it's just a solid color, but because this does have a pattern to it, you do want to make sure that you are doing this way. And we're doing both sides of the freezer paper. We're sandwiching it in because we want to make sure that it's really stiff. Cotton is much softer and flexible. It's more flexible than felt. So you want to make sure that you are stabilizing it really well. You want it to be really, really stiff, especially because we're using the Explore machine and the blade kind of drags through. It doesn't necessarily cut like the maker does with the rotary blade. We're going to flip it over to this side and we're going to heat it up and adhere this side of it too. Now I know that when I turned it over, the pattern side of my fabric was face up. So I know that when I am done, I can just leave it as is and I don't have to mirror my image. And it's important to remember that because you don't want to find out after you cut that your pieces are useless. Fabric is expensive, so we want to make sure we're doing it the right way and always double checking. You can always go ahead and make a mark on your on one side of your freezer paper because you can write on it, so you can easily just write before you start ironing, using the Easy Press. You can just write a little check or a little circle or something on one side so that you know what side is supposed to be up. You can write up, it doesn't really matter. Just whatever you do. I find that if I do it this way, I don't have any issues, but if you need an indication, you can go ahead and write that on there. Okay, I'm going to turn this off, and I just want to show you guys how stiff this cotton fabric is. And that is what we really need. You need it to be like that. You can see the felt is a little more flexible, but it is stiffer. So make sure that it's nice and stiff. Now we're going to go over to the computer. Okay, now we're at the computer. If you've never watched my videos before, you can look for this little circle to see the mouse. I know sometimes that can be hard to see. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to be using the pink bonded fabric blade with the Air 2. Now some of you may not know, but it is just a premium fine point blade. It's just pink and has a pink housing so that it's easy to tell the difference if you cut a lot of fabric. But if you wanted to just use a regular premium fine point blade in your regular housing, you can. I just recommend that you get a separate blade for fabric. I usually keep mine like in the packaging, and I write fabric on the back, and then I just keep it in the storage compartment of my Air 2, and then I can just swap it back and forth. But I ended up buying the pink fabric blade because it just seemed much easier. So that's what I use, and that's what I'll be using today. And I'll also be using the pink fabric mat to hold it down. So what I'm going to do is just show you, I'm going to go over here and grab a shape. I'm just going to grab a circle. I want to show you guys the difference between cutting with a more intricate design and just cutting something simple. So I'm going to do just a 1.5 inch circle, something real small and simple. And then for the text, I'm just going to do a capital A and a capital B. And I'm going to just use Cricut Sans, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so that our it's not too intricate. And I'm going to go over in our layers panel to the top to color sync, and I'm just going to sync these right up. Now I'm going to cut the felt first, so we can go ahead and make it. Everything looks good here, so we'll continue. And I'm going to make sure that my dial on my Air 2 is set to custom, and then I will select my Air 2 from the drop-down menu. And when it goes to set material, I'm going to go over here to browse all materials, and I'm going to select that, and you can just go right to categories and down to felt, and I'm going to do felt wool bonded. Once I select done, I can go ahead and get my mat ready. I am, like I said, using the pink mat here, the pink fabric mat, and I'm going to do the freezer paper side down. Now this mat is much stickier than your other mats, so be very careful, and I'll show you, we need to carefully peel this off. So I'm going to go ahead and load my mat, and we'll start cutting. Now you're going to see that doing the A and the B, it's going to, because it's a little more intricate, and the blade, like I said, it does drag instead of cut the rotary blade. So it's a little bit different. So you're not going to get the cleanest cuts, but I have found that using these settings, this mat, this blade has been has gotten the best results, even though that little piece in the A and the little pieces in the B are a little smaller, a little more intricate. You're still getting a nice clean cut. Now what I'm going to do between each cut or a different fabric or whatever, every time I unload my mat, I like to make sure that I go and I check my fabric blade for any debris or any fabric lint, any type of stuff that could have gotten on it. Now you have to remember that felt is more plush and fuzzy, so if you're cutting fabrics like that, you're going to get a little more. So very carefully push the topper on your blade, and you can see I do have some felt there, and just very carefully, because this blade is really sharp, so just carefully. You can also use tin foil, stab it in the tin foil to help clean it off, and then you can just put it right back in for your next cut. And I'm going to carefully pull this away. Like I said, this mat is much stickier, so you want to make sure that it doesn't tear and get stuck to your mat. Now you see how pulling away from that B, it got stuck a little bit, but everything else, it's cut really, really well. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to pull my felt right from the freezer paper. It comes off so easily. You can see how it didn't cut perfectly cleanly, but it's only on by a small little fuzz over here. So I can just go ahead and take my fabric, actually I don't even need fabric scissors, just my little Cricut scissors here, and snip that. And I'll show you up close. I mean, you got pretty clean lines there. So it's really nice. And now we'll do the B. And again, I mean, pretty clean lines. Get a little fuzz up here, but not too bad. And then the circle is, you know, just a little fuzz there, but I mean, it cuts really, really nicely. So, to get this off the pink fabric mat, I highly recommend the fabric tweezers here. They are nice round blunt edges or ends, and it makes it much easier to get stuff off your mat without scraping your mat all up. This is really great for fibers too. I do have the maker, so I use this if I cut a lot of cotton and stuff and the threads stick to it. This pulls them right up. If you do too much of your fingers on the mat, it gets oily and it decreases the sticky of your mat, and you really don't want that. So go ahead and pull this all up. Now, until I can clean my mat, I'm going to turn it around and I'll come back and we'll cut the cotton fabric. Okay, now I'm back and I have my cotton fabric with the freezer paper on both sides adhered to my mat. I have the pattern side up. If you marked it, you'll know. And I'm going to set my dial to bonded fabric. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm doing the same cut that I already did. And because I am using a different setting and I'm just changing on the wheel, I really don't have to change anything else. Now we're going to go ahead and let this go. And I already cleaned my blade off from my previous cut with the felt. So if you didn't, make sure you did that. That's really important. You want to make sure it's nice and clean. And you're seeing this is cutting really nicely because we bonded it really well. We made it nice and stiff. I see that I have a bubble right here. You want to make sure when you're ironing, you really iron it nice. I didn't notice it until just now in this light and from this direction. So make sure you pay attention for that. Now again, we're going to carefully, very carefully, peel this off. You can see I have a little thread stuck right there, and that's just, you know, kind of how cotton works. It's got lots of loose thread, and this is very carefully pull this. This is sticking much worse than the felt because it is so much stiffer. Okay, and we're just going to go ahead. I'm going to use my little fabric tweezers here. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to set these aside, and I'm going to make sure that I pull all of my pieces off. It's harder to do while I'm holding it. Just pull it all off there, and we'll get all of these off. Okay, and you can see this freezer paper peels off really easily. That's stuck on a little more, so you can see I do have a little thread around there, but nothing too crazy. And this cut really, really nicely. This is a little harder to get apart, but just find a corner and pull it. I mean, you know, you can see it's pretty great cut. Again, we're going to find a little corner, and now because that's a little more intricate, you want to make sure it's a little thinner. I mean, this cut really, really, really nicely. So this is my little hack, and with some feedback from others, this is how you cut fabric on your Explore machine.